I spent, I don't know, maybe $60, $70 a month on probiotic capsules, fancy ones, the kind with 16 strains and a Latin name I couldn't pronounce. I was a nurse for over 20 years. I believed in the system. I believed in the capsule. And then one autumn morning, I want to say it was a Tuesday, I was standing in my garden pulling up the last of the cabbages. The fog was still sitting low in the Douglas firs, that particular Oregon quiet you only get before 8 in the morning. And I thought, plain as day, this cabbage is more alive than anything in that brown plastic bottle. I stopped buying probiotics that same week. That was 3 years ago. My digestion is better. My energy is steadier. And I haven't spent a single dollar on a capsule since. Now, I'm not here to tell you that supplements are evil. I was a nurse. I know better than that, but I am here to tell you that the Creator put living medicine right in the ground beneath your feet, and most of us are just walking past it. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what I grow, what I ferment, and why I believe fermented plants beat a lab-made capsule every single time. Stay with me. Let me start with something they never covered in nursing school. The soil in your garden and the lining of your gut are, in ways that still strike me as a little wondrous, part of the same story. Both are teeming with microbial life, billions of organisms that either cooperate or compete. Both collapse when you drown them in chemicals. The same basic rules apply above ground and below your ribs. Scientists call this the gut-soil axis. I call it the Creator's design. He didn't build two separate systems. He built one continuous chain, from the ground to the plant to your plate to your body. The part the supplement industry doesn't like to dwell on is this. Getting a live bacterium from a capsule to your large intestine is harder than the label implies. Stomach acid is brutal on certain strains. Bifidobacteria, for instance, some of the most commonly marketed types, can lose the vast majority of their potency in an uncoated capsule before they ever clear your stomach. Survival depends heavily on the specific strain and whether the manufacturer built in any protective coating. Some do, many don't. The science is messier than the marketing. A jar of properly fermented sauerkraut, on the other hand, the kind made with just cabbage and salt, no vinegar, no shortcuts, carries billions of live, acid-adapted lactobacillus bacteria. These are microbes that evolved to survive an acidic environment. They've been doing it for thousands of years. That's not herbal folklore. That's food science, and it's been documented in nutritional research going back decades. All right, let's get our hands dirty. Real sauerkraut, the living kind, needs exactly 2 ingredients: cabbage, salt. That's it. Start with 1 medium head of green cabbage, about 2 pounds, or just under a kilogram for my friends across the pond. Peel off the outer leaves and set one aside. You'll need it later. Slice the cabbage thin. I use a simple chef's knife. Now, was it my grandmother who taught me this? Or her sister Margaret? I honestly can't say. But one of them told me, the thinner the slice, the faster the ferment. And she was right. Transfer all of it to a large ceramic or glass bowl. Measure out 1 tablespoon, about 15 grams, of non-iodized salt for every 2 pounds of cabbage. Don't use iodized. The iodine is there to kill bacteria, and that's exactly what we're trying to grow here. Now squeeze. Work that salt into the cabbage with your hands for a good 5 to 8 minutes. You'll feel it soften. You'll see the water start releasing. This is the natural brine the cabbage makes from its own juice. I find this part almost meditative. Pack it tight into a clean quart-sized mason jar. Press it down firmly after each handful so that the brine rises above the cabbage. That brine level is everything. It's what keeps oxygen out and creates the anaerobic environment the lactobacillus bacteria need to do their work. Take that outer leaf you set aside, fold it to fit, and press it on top as a cap to hold everything below the brine. Then weigh it down. I use a small Ziploc bag filled with brine, or just a smooth river stone I've boiled. Leave the jar loosely covered, not airtight, at room temperature, between 60 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 16 to 24 Celsius. Now you wait. In 3 to 5 days, you'll see small bubbles. That's fermentation beginning. Taste it on day 3. It should be pleasantly sour, crunchy, a bit tangy. At 7 days, it's fuller flavored. At 2 weeks, it has the depth and complexity of something genuinely alive. Store it in the refrigerator after that. It'll keep for 6 months or more. And every single serving, just 2 tablespoons, delivers millions of live cultures directly to your gut. Not dead ones in a capsule, living ones. Now, sauerkraut gets most of the attention, but there's another ferment in my kitchen that I'd argue is just as important, and it gets almost none. It's called beet kvass. Kvass is a traditional Eastern European fermented drink that's been documented in folk medicine records going back centuries. It's not wine. It's not vinegar. It's something gentler and far more interesting. The beet itself is rich in a compound called betaine, trimethylglycine, if you want the full name. Scientists call it a methyl donor. Chemistry speak, I know. Think of it this way. It's a molecule that helps your liver process fats and clear out metabolic waste, keeps the engine turning over cleanly. Research, mostly in animal models and some human trials in liver disease patients, does show real effects on liver cell function. My nursing brain does insist I say this plainly. The strong clinical evidence for betaine is mostly at therapeutic doses in people already managing liver conditions. The amount in a glass of kvass is more modest, but modest isn't nothing. And on top of that, you're also getting live lactobacillus cultures from the fermentation itself, a real probiotic benefit alongside whatever the beet brings. 2 for 1. Fermented beet preparations go back generations across Eastern Europe and Ukraine. That's a long ethnopharmacological record, the kind that existed long before clinical trials were invented. I respect it, I drink it, and I'm waiting, along with everyone else, to see what the larger human studies eventually confirm. I'll be straight with you. Beet kvass is not a treatment for anything. If you have liver disease or you're on blood thinners, talk to your doctor before adding this. Beets have a real effect on nitric oxide levels and blood flow, and there are medication interactions worth knowing about. I'm sharing this as a food tradition, not a prescription. Making beet kvass is almost easier than sauerkraut. Let me walk you through it. You need 3 medium beets, about a pound, and a quart-sized mason jar. That's your whole equipment list. Wash the beets well. Don't peel them. The skin carries wild fermentation cultures, and you want those. Cut each beet into rough 1-inch chunks, not too small. Small pieces can push the fermentation toward alcohol rather than lactic acid. Pack the beet pieces loosely into the jar. Then mix yourself a simple brine. 1 teaspoon of non-iodized salt dissolved in 1 cup, about 240 milliliters, of filtered non-chlorinated water. Chlorine inhibits the fermentation cultures. I use a simple pitcher filter. Pour the brine over the beets until they're covered. Leave about 1 inch of headspace at the top. Give the jar a slow turn, not a shake, just a gentle roll, to let any air pockets rise. Cover with a cloth or a loosely placed lid. Set it on your counter, not in direct sun, for 2 to 4 days. You'll know it's ready when you see a few bubbles and the liquid has deepened to a rich, dark jewel color. It'll smell earthy and faintly sour. Right. Strain, refrigerate, and drink about 4 ounces, half a cup, in the morning before breakfast. That's it. Some folks add a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar to the finished kvass. I don't bother. I reckon the beet does enough on its own. Here's one that a lot of people don't know about. Water kefir. It's not as trendy as kombucha. It's milder, less acidic, and honestly, easier to make. Water kefir is produced by a community of bacteria and yeast that live in small, gelatinous grains. The grains look a little like soft, translucent pebbles. They're a symbiotic culture, bacteria and yeast living together in a polysaccharide matrix, feeding on sugar water and producing a naturally carbonated, mildly sour drink. What I find interesting about water kefir is the sheer variety inside those little grains. Sequencing studies have documented a wide range of bacterial and yeast species in active cultures, well more than you'll find listed on most capsule labels, which might name 10 or 15 strains at most. The exact count shifts depending on the culture's history and environment, and the research is still early. But diversity, it seems, is a real asset. That matters because your gut isn't looking for one hero microbe. It's looking for a community. The creator didn't design a monoculture, he designed an ecosystem. It's also a fine option if dairy doesn't agree with you. Traditional kefir is milk-based, and plenty of folks, especially as they get older, don't do well with it. Water kefir is entirely plant-based, same probiotic principle, none of the cream. I should be honest about where the science sits. Most of what we know about water kefir comes from lab studies, not large human trials. The traditional record, centuries of use across Eastern Europe and parts of Central America, is well established. But I'm not going to dress up a folk tradition as settled clinical medicine. What I can tell you is what I've observed and what the evidence, modest as it currently is, suggests. To make water kefir, you first need to get water kefir grains. You can order them online, dried grains that you rehydrate, or if you know someone who makes it, they'll likely just give you some. These cultures share well. That's their nature. Your ratio for the first ferment: 1/4 cup of plain white sugar. Yes, white sugar, dissolved in 4 cups of filtered water. The sugar is food for the grains. They consume most of it during fermentation. You don't end up drinking a sugar bomb. Add the dissolved sugar water to your clean quart jar. Let it cool to room temperature. Never add grains to warm water. They're living things. Warmth above about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius, stresses them. Add 2 to 3 tablespoons of your water kefir grains. Then, optional but traditional, drop in a clean slice of lemon and a couple of organic raisins. The raisins provide trace minerals that help keep the grains healthy over time. Cover loosely and leave at room temperature for 24 to 48 hours. In Oregon summers, 24 hours is usually plenty. In cooler weather, and we get some real cool spells here, you might want the full 48. Strain out the grains. You'll reuse them every few days, nearly forever. And you've got your first ferment. You can drink it just like this, or do a second ferment to add flavor and carbonation. I like to add a few slices of fresh ginger and a small piece of lemon peel to a sealed bottle and leave it another 12 to 24 hours at room temperature, naturally fizzy. I want to talk about something a little uncomfortable, not inflammatory, just honest. I spent 22 years as a registered nurse. I have a deep, genuine respect for pharmaceutical medicine. When you come in with a burst appendix or a heart attack, you don't want sauerkraut. You want a surgeon and an IV, full stop. But I also spent 22 years watching patients spend $60, $80, $100 a month on probiotic capsules that, based on the clinical literature I was reading even back then, had real question marks over them. Whether those live cultures were making it through the stomach to the colon in any kind of meaningful number. The research wasn't reassuring, and it still isn't simple. The probiotic supplement market is worth tens of billions of dollars globally. And look, the evidence for specific strains treating specific conditions is real, and it's growing. I'm not dismissing that. But the evidence for a general wellness capsule being meaningfully better than fermented whole food as part of a daily diet? It's thin. Honest to God, it's thin. Stanford researchers published a clinical trial in the journal Cell in 2021, a proper randomized study, not a survey, and they found that a diet rich in fermented foods increased gut microbiome diversity and brought down markers of inflammation. The fermented food group outperformed the high-fiber group on microbiome diversity. That stuck with me. I'm not saying capsules are useless. Targeted probiotic therapy after antibiotics, or for specific gut conditions, that's real medicine. And your doctor's guidance comes first. Full stop. What I'm saying is that the creator already put the solution in the ground, long before any laboratory synthesized a lactobacillus strain and pressed it into a capsule. People were fermenting their food, and they were doing just fine. We got distracted. I got distracted. And then one foggy morning in Oregon, a cabbage reminded me. Let me bring in a bit of what I learned in nursing school. Translated, I promise. Your gut microbiome is roughly 38 trillion microbial cells. A 2016 paper revised the old estimate, Turns out it's not 10 bacteria for every human cell, like we used to say. It's closer to 1 to 1. 38 trillion bacteria, about 30 trillion human cells. The numbers are almost matched. That's a different picture than most people carry around in their heads. These microbes aren't just processing your dinner. Evidence indicates they play a role in dialing your immune response up or down, acting like a volume control on inflammation. Diverse community, balanced system. Strip it out with antibiotics or processed food or chronic stress, and the control starts slipping. The part that really stopped me, there was a study in 2022 that followed gardening and non-gardening families through a whole growing season. The gardeners showed greater gut microbial diversity at peak season, and the researchers found actual soil microbes from those family gardens turning up in the gardeners' gut samples. We are trading microbes with our soil, back and forth. I don't think most people realize that. Garden soil and the human gut aren't the same microbial neighborhood. That's worth saying plainly. Soil runs on proteobacteria, actinobacteria, acetobacteria. The gut has its own dominant families. They're different communities, but overlap exists. Exchange happens, and the evidence that gardening changes the human microbiome is real and measurable. I find that quietly remarkable. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kvass, kefir, these weren't invented as health products. They were how people ate before refrigeration. They preserved food through winter, and in doing so, they were keeping their microbial community connected to the world around them in a way that most of us, in our sealed modern kitchens, simply don't do anymore. Most mornings I put my hands in the garden soil before I do anything else. Even in the drizzle, even on the days my knees protest, I believe it's doing something good. Not just growing food, something older than that. One more ferment. This one's almost too easy, and I want you to know about it because I think it belongs in every household. Fermented garlic honey. Raw honey has a long history in folk medicine as an antimicrobial agent, and the evidence behind it isn't purely anecdotal. Studies suggest that raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide, defensive proteins, and a naturally low moisture content that creates conditions hostile to harmful bacteria in laboratory settings. Garlic gets its reputation from allicin, but allicin doesn't exist in an intact clove. You have to break the tissue to make it. The clove holds two compounds in separate compartments, alliin and an enzyme called alliinase. Crush or cut it, those two meet, and allicin forms within about a minute. It's the plant's defense system, evolved to repel attackers. Lab studies document real antimicrobial activity and immune-supporting properties. When you ferment garlic in raw honey, the garlic slowly releases its moisture into the honey, thinning it and starting a gentle fermentation. Over 4 to 6 weeks, the harsh raw bite mellows into something almost sweet, complex, the kind of flavor that makes you wonder why you ever bought anything at the pharmacy. I'll be plain about the research. Fermented garlic honey as a combined preparation hasn't been studied in any large human trial that I'm aware of. Both ingredients have long individual records in folk and ethnopharmacological practice. Separately, they're well documented. Together, the evidence is mostly anecdotal and traditional. In my experience, though, this is the jar I reach for first at the start of a cold, or stir into dressings, or drop into broth. Make of that what you will. This couldn't be simpler. Get yourself a clean half-pint jar. Fill it about 2/3 full with peeled raw garlic cloves. Use organic if you can find it. Conventional garlic is sometimes treated with sprout inhibitors. And while it won't ruin the ferment, organic gives you a cleaner starting point. Pour raw, unfiltered honey over the garlic until the cloves are fully covered. You want about a 1/2 inch of honey above the garlic. Give it a slow stir with a clean wooden spoon. Loosely cap it, not airtight, because the fermentation will produce small amounts of gas. Turn the jar upside down once a day to coat all the cloves and prevent any from drying out at the top. At first, nothing much seems to happen, but around day 7 or 8, you'll notice tiny bubbles beginning to form. The honey will start to thin. The garlic will shift from bright white to a pale, warm gold. That's your fermentation working. After 4 weeks minimum, it's ready. The garlic will be mild, almost sweet. The The honey will have a deeper, more complex flavor, slightly tangy underneath the sweetness. Take 1 or 2 cloves a day, or a teaspoon of the honey, particularly good at the start of cold season, which in Oregon seems to start somewhere around September and run until June. So, 3 years ago, I canceled my probiotic subscription, and I started growing my medicine instead. Sauerkraut, beet kvass, water kefir, fermented garlic honey, 4 ferments, all simple, all made from ingredients you can grow yourself or find at any farmer's market. None of this is complicated, none of it is expensive. A head of cabbage and a little patience. That's your entry ticket. The Creator, I believe, put everything we need in the ground and in the plants. Our job is just to learn how to use them again, to be faithful stewards of what's provided. Before I let you go, a quick word I mean sincerely. I'm sharing my experience and what the research suggests as of today. I'm not your doctor. If you're dealing with a chronic condition, if you're immunocompromised, if you're on immunosuppressants, please loop in your healthcare provider before adding fermented foods to your regular routine. Some people genuinely need to be cautious around high bacteria count foods. Your situation is yours, but for most of us, a tablespoon of sauerkraut with dinner and a small glass of beet kvass in the morning is a gentle food-based place to start, and it costs about 95 cents to make. If you try any of these, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Tell me which ferment you started with, how it went, and whether you noticed any difference in how you feel after 2 or 3 weeks. I read every single comment, though I'll confess I'm slow to reply on the foggy mornings. I'll leave you with a question, a real one, not just filler. A 2022 study found that soil microbes from family gardens turn up in the actual gut samples of the people who tend those gardens. So I keep thinking, if your fermentation vegetables come from your own garden, grown in soil you've been feeding and tending for years, does the ferment that develops from those vegetables carry a different microbial fingerprint than one made from a supermarket cabbage? And if you think it does, what soil practices are you using? Compost? Cover crops? I genuinely don't know the answer. I'm curious what you've noticed. Leave your thoughts down below. I'll be watching. Until next time, God bless you and your garden. And your gut, too.